Hey everyone, welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into a really wild modern dating paradox. Why do the absolute most emotionally unpredictable, chaotic traits often create the strongest magnetic pull? We're going to decode the hidden psychological mechanics that can literally make red flags look incredibly attractive. So if you've ever wondered why someone would, bypass a perfectly stable, loving partner for an absolute roller coaster of drama, well, you're definitely not alone. There's some deeply rooted behavioral science behind this toxic magnetism, and by unpacking it, we're going to fundamentally change how we understand desire.
Logically, right? Human beings should crave peace. You'd completely assume that confident, high-status guys who have their lives totally together would naturally gravitate towards stability, warmth, and consistency. But human neurobiology doesn't always care about logic. We frequently see highly successful people just effortlessly fall for partners who are notoriously difficult to read or even dangerously manipulative. So why does this happen? Well, it's because there's a massive disconnect between what we say we want in a relationship and what actually triggers our primal reward systems. Turns out there's a very specific set of traits that absolutely magnetizes high-value individuals, pulling them in completely against their better judgment.
To really grasp this magnetic pull, we have to talk about what psychologists call the Dark Triad. Basically, this is a personality cluster built around three specific traits. First up, narcissism, which is an inflated sense of self-importance. Second, Machiavellianism, which is essentially strategic, calculated manipulation. And third, psychopathic traits, which, in a dating context, usually manifest as a chilling lack of empathy or remorse. Now, I know, on paper, these sound like instant deal breakers, right? But here's the crazy part. In the early stages of dating, they don't push people away at all. Instead, they operate like a tractor beam. They disguise themselves as the exact qualities we find most captivating, pulling people in with an overwhelming, almost hypnotic force. So, here's our roadmap for today. We'll be breaking this down into 4 parts: strategic confidence, emotional unpredictability, social intelligence, and finally, the truth about attraction. Let's jump right in. Starting off with trait number 1, strategic confidence, and the sheer power of intense self-belief. People who score high in narcissistic traits project this intense, unwavering self-belief. They carry themselves like they are the ultimate prize. And honestly, this creates something incredibly powerful called status tension. Imagine a highly competitive, successful guy walking into a room. He's used to people being impressed by him, right? He expects that validation. But then, he meets someone who is completely unfazed by his achievements. They project absolute emotional unshakability. Boom. This instantly triggers a psychological challenge. The lack of easy validation creates this aura of mystery. It literally flips a switch in the competitive brain, making the high achiever subconsciously think, okay, I need to win this person over to prove my own worth. The indifference itself becomes the psychological hook.
But you guys, here is where the illusion takes hold. What initially looks like genuine magnetic confidence is actually rooted in something much darker. Real, authentic confidence sounds something like, hey, I know my worth and I'm perfectly fine if you don't see it. It's peaceful. But the strategic confidence of the Dark Triad, that's a performance. It is calculated control. It eventually shifts from just knowing their worth to aggressively controlling how you perceive their worth. That unshakable persona is really just a tool used to dominate the dynamic, masking a deep need for constant external validation under the guise of being completely untouchable.
All right, let's move on to trait number 2, emotional unpredictability and the psychology of inconsistency.
Dark Triad personalities operate on a severe behavioral pendulum, which creates a profound sense of emotional whiplash. One second they are incredibly warm and magnetic. They make you feel completely seen, valued, like you're the absolute center of their universe. But the very next moment, the pendulum swings. They become distant, cold, entirely unreachable. Just when you think you know exactly where you stand, the ground completely shifts underneath you. And the truly bizarre part is that this inconsistency perfectly mimics the neurobiology of literal addiction. The brain doesn't know what to expect, and that uncertainty becomes highly, highly intoxicating. This is where our neurobiology actually gets hijacked through a mechanism called intermittent reinforcement. Honestly, it's the exact same psychological hook used in casino slot machines. First, you encounter behavioral uncertainty. You pull the lever not knowing if you'll win or lose. Because we naturally chase what we can't easily predict, our brains start desperately searching for that emotional reward. So we endure the cold distance because we're just waiting for that massive dopamine hit when the warmth finally returns. And as a result, we become deeply psychologically invested, working harder and harder just to get back to baseline. Now, in the beginning stages, this unpredictable emotional roller coaster feels incredibly exciting. Your brain is releasing adrenaline and cortisol, which actually feel almost identical to the physical sensations of intense passion and chemistry. It feels like fireworks. But living in a constant state of adrenaline is just not sustainable. It eventually drains your emotional reserves completely. The very mechanism that hooks someone in, the drama, the uncertainty, the extreme highs and extreme lows, is the exact same mechanism that eventually burns out their nervous system. What starts as this exhilarating chase invariably becomes entirely exhausting over time.
Which brings us to trait number 3, social intelligence and the dark art of mirroring.
Highly manipulative people are extremely adept at studying human behavior to artificially orchestrate attraction. They don't just rely on natural charm. They use a specific tactic called mirroring. They carefully observe your body language, they adopt your core values, they even mimic your vocal tone. If you're super passionate about some niche topic, well, suddenly they are too. They excel at creating immediate, overwhelming attraction by saying exactly what your inner child desperately wants to hear. To the person falling for it, this calculated chameleon act looks and feels like a once-in-a-lifetime soulmate connection, just brimming with profound emotional depth. But distinguishing this illusion from reality is your ultimate defense mechanism. So how do they actually feel different? Well, authentic, genuine connection is built slowly over time through shared vulnerability, mutual respect, and consistent actions. It feels grounded. Calculated emotional influence, on the other hand, feels artificially accelerated. It's that classic too good to be true scenario where the intimacy feels incredibly rushed and the alignment feels almost suspiciously perfect. The bond hasn't been earned, it's been manufactured. Let me tell you, recognizing the difference between a natural, slow-burn connection and a strategic emotional performance can save you years of heartache. All right, finally, part 4, the truth about attraction and the battle between illusion and reality. Ultimately, those who have actually lived through these chaotic dynamics come to a pretty sobering realization about what truly works. The Dark Triad undoubtedly excels at generating intense initial attraction, delivering mystery, wild intensity, and complex mind games. It starts a massive fire, but a fire that burns that hot quickly burns the house down. High-value individuals eventually realize that the thrill of the game is completely unsustainable. True, lasting attraction thrives on peace, unwavering trust, and genuine emotional maturity. Those quiet, stable traits might not trigger an immediate adrenaline rush, but they are absolutely the ultimate prize when it comes to actually building a life with someone.
There's a great quote from our source material that really hits the nail on the head. Real attraction isn't built on mind games. It's built on self-respect, emotional control, purpose, and genuine connection. Let that sink in for a second. You simply cannot build a stable house on a foundation of calculated unpredictability. True peace in any relationship requires foundational elements that manipulative traits just cannot provide, no matter how intoxicating they might seem at first glance.
So I'm going to leave you with this final thought to reflect on regarding your own dating dynamics. Are you chasing a genuine connection, or are you just falling for a calculated illusion? It's an absolutely crucial question to ask yourself whenever you feel that overwhelming, unpredictable pull toward chaos. Thank you so much for joining me to break down this fascinating explainer. Stay curious, stay observant, and above all, take care of your peace.